She walked into the most exclusive charity gala in Manhattan wearing a $2,000 dress and carrying a portfolio worth $4.3 billion. Nobody recognized her. The CEO of her own company told security to throw her out. The board members who'd been stealing from her for 3 years laughed when she asked for a seat at their table. The man who orchestrated her parents' death offered her a job as his assistant. They had no idea that Zara Grant, the 28-year-old black woman they were dismissing as nobody, owned 87% of everything they thought was theirs. And by the end of the night, she was going to take it all back. This is the story of the invisible heir, the patient predator, and the boardroom massacre that reminded everyone why you should never underestimate a woman who's been watching, waiting, and building her case in absolute silence. Welcome back, my besties. You know how we roll here. You know how we do it here. You won't see this twist coming, I promise you. Quickly hit the subscribe button right now and grab your popcorn because you have a lot of lessons to take home from this masterpiece, especially if you are a woman. It's a promise. 3 years ago, Richard and Diana Grant died when their private jet went down over the Atlantic during a business trip to London. The official report said mechanical failure. The insurance paid out. The funerals were elaborate. Manhattan society mourned the loss of 2 titans of industry. Their only child, Zara Grant, was 25 years old, fresh out of Columbia Business School, and suddenly the majority shareholder of Grant Industries, a conglomerate worth $4.3 billion, with interests in real estate, technology, manufacturing, and media. The board of directors held an emergency meeting 3 days after the funeral. Zara wasn't invited. Christopher Hayes, the company's COO for 15 years, walked into that meeting with a plan. He'd been Richard Grant's right hand, the man who knew every deal, every contact, every secret. And now, with Richard dead, Hayes saw an opportunity. "Gentlemen," he said, addressing the 10 board members gathered in the Grant Industries conference room on the 42nd floor overlooking Manhattan, "we face a crisis. Richard and Diana are gone. Their daughter, while legally the majority shareholder, has zero experience running a company of this magnitude. She has an MBA from Columbia," Director Chen pointed out. "An MBA," Hayes repeated with a dismissive smile. "Lovely. I have 30 years of actual experience. Gentlemen, I propose we offer Miss Grant a generous advisory position, keep her comfortable and quiet, while I assume the CEO role and we run this company the way it needs to be run." Director Martinez, one of Richard's oldest friends, spoke up. Richard's will specifically states that Zara inherits his 87% share with full voting rights. "We can't just sideline her." "We're not sidelining her," Hayes said smoothly. "We're protecting her and protecting the company. Richard built this empire over 40 years. Do we really want to hand it to a 25-year-old girl who's never spent a day in a real boardroom?" He didn't say black girl, but the way certain board members nodded, Zara would later realize they heard it anyway. The vote was 8-2. Christopher Hayes became CEO of Grant Industries. Zara Grant, the actual owner, was offered a position on the advisory board, no voting power, a comfortable salary, and a polite suggestion that she take time to grieve. What they didn't know was that Zara had been sitting in her father's office since age 16, learning every aspect of the business. That she'd spent summers interning at Grant Industries under a fake name so employees would treat her like any other intern. That her Columbia MBA thesis was a forensic analysis of corporate embezzlement patterns. And that she'd found irregularities in Grant Industries' finances 6 months before her parents died. Irregularities that pointed directly to Christopher Hayes. So when the board voted to make Hayes CEO, Zara did something unexpected. She smiled, thanked them for their concern, accepted the advisory position, and disappeared. For 3 years, nobody saw her. The board assumed she'd taken her trust fund and vanished into the comfortable obscurity of wealthy young heirs who never amount to anything. Hayes ran Grant Industries with increasing boldness, making deals that enriched him personally, steering contracts to companies that kicked back percentages, slowly bleeding the empire Richard Grant built. But Zara hadn't disappeared. She'd gone underground. She moved to a modest apartment in Brooklyn under her middle name, Chen, her mother's maiden name. Cut her hair short, dressed down, became invisible in a city where everyone was trying to be seen. During the day, she worked at a small accounting firm in Queens, learning the practical side of financial investigation that her MBA only touched on theoretically. At night, she built her own portfolio, used the $10 million trust fund her parents left her to invest in tech startups, real estate in emerging neighborhoods, and 3 fashion brands founded by women of color who couldn't get traditional funding. By year 2, her personal portfolio was worth $47 million. By year 3, she was worth $200 million, independent of Grant Industries. But more importantly, she'd spent those 3 years building a case, hiring private investigators, connecting with former Grant Industries employees who'd been fired when they asked questions, documenting every shady deal Hayes made, tracking the money. And she discovered something that made her blood run cold. Her parents' plane crash wasn't an accident. The mechanic who'd inspected the jet 3 days before it went down had been paid $500,000 by a shell company that traced back to an account Hayes controlled. Her parents had been murdered, and Hayes had taken everything while Zara grieved. So she planned, not revenge, something more permanent, complete reclamation. The annual Grant Industries Charity Gala was the social event of the Manhattan fall season. 500 guests, $50,000 tables, a silent auction featuring art and experiences worth millions, all proceeds going to various charities, though anyone who looked at the books would notice that administrative costs somehow ate up 60% of donations. Zara received an invitation, not to her Brooklyn apartment, to her old penthouse on the Upper East Side that she hadn't visited in 3 years. The invitation was addressed to Miss Zara Grant and guest. She wasn't on the guest list as a board member. She was being invited as the daughter of the founders, a pretty face for the photo ops. Perfect. Zara bought a dress, not from one of the fashion houses Grant Industries had partnerships with, from one of the small Black-owned brands she'd personally invested in. A deep emerald gown that cost $2,000 but looked like $20,000. She had her hair done at a salon in Harlem, her makeup by an artist who'd never worked a society event. She looked stunning, and completely unlike the grieving 25-year-old the board remembered. The gala was held at the Plaza Hotel. Red carpet, photographers, Manhattan's elite arriving in town, cars and limousines, dripping in jewelry and self-importance. Zara arrived alone in an Uber. The photographers ignored her. No one recognized her. She walked up to the check-in table where 2 young women in matching black dresses managed the guest list. Name? One of them asked without looking up. Zara Grant. The woman scanned her list, frowned. I don't see you on the guest list. Are you sure you have the right event? Very sure. This is the Grant Industries Charity Gala. I'm Zara Grant, as in Grant Industries. The second woman looked up now, taking in Zara's appearance with barely concealed skepticism. A young black woman, no obvious wealth markers, claiming to be related to the Grants. Do you have identification? Zara pulled out her driver's license. The woman examined it like she was expecting a fake, then whispered something to her colleague. Miss Grant, I apologize, but you're not on the VIP list. You're listed as a general attendee. Your table assignment is table 47. Table 47, in the back, near the kitchens. The table where nobody sat. Interesting, Zara said calmly. And where is Christopher Hayes sitting? Mr. Hayes has the head table, table 1, but that's reserved for board members and distinguished guests. I'm sure it is. Zara took her table assignment card and walked into the ballroom. The Plaza ballroom was transformed. Crystal chandeliers, gold accents, tables covered in white linens with elaborate centerpieces. A stage where Hayes would give his annual speech about Grant Industries' charitable mission. A silent auction displaying items including a week at a villa in Sydney, courtside Knicks tickets, and a private dinner with several celebrities. Zara walked through the crowd, unnoticed. Past tech CEOs from Silicon Valley who'd flown in for the event, past Manhattan socialites comparing jewelry, past Grant Industries executives who'd worked under her father and wouldn't recognize her if she stood on a table. She found table 47, near the kitchen doors, seated with people who'd clearly bought the cheapest tickets, more interested in being able to say they attended than in actually mattering. Perfect position to watch everything. From her seat, Zara had a clear view of table 1. Christopher Hayes sat at the center, wearing a custom tux that probably cost $15,000. On his wrist, a gold Rolex that Richard Grant used to wear. That detail made Zara's jaw clench. Next to Hayes sat the board members. She recognized all of them. Director Chen, Director Martinez, Director Williams, all the men who'd voted to sideline her 3 years ago. And sitting next to Hayes, laughing at something he said, was a woman Zara didn't recognize. Late 30s, white, gorgeous, wearing enough diamonds to fund a small country. Zara made a note to find out who she was. The gala proceeded exactly as expected. Dinner was served. Speeches were made. Hayes took the stage and delivered a practice speech about Richard Grant's vision and how Grant Industries was honoring that legacy through charitable giving. Every word was a lie wrapped in expensive fabric. After dinner, the silent auction heated up. Zara watched Hayes circulate, shaking hands, accepting congratulations on Grant Industries' success, playing the role of grieving successor to Richard Grant's empire. Then, something unexpected happened. A young girl, maybe 12 years old, walked up to table 1. She was black, wearing a dress that was nice but clearly not designer, her hair in neat braids. She looked nervous but determined. She walked straight up to Hayes. Zara couldn't hear what was said from her table, but she saw Hayes' expression change from mild annoyance to outright anger, saw him grab something from the girl's hand, saw him throw it on the floor. Then she heard his voice carry across the ballroom, loud enough that nearby tables went quiet. Did someone's maid bring her kid to work? Get this little rat out of my event? The girl's voice trembled but carried. Sir, I'm not a rat. I'm Destiny Mitchell. My mom worked for Grant Industries for 15 years before you fired her. You told her she was stealing, but she wasn't. She was asking questions about missing money. You destroyed her career. She can't get hired anywhere now because of what you said about her. Hayes' face went red. Security. 2 security guards started moving toward table 1. The girl kept talking, voice shaking but words clear. My mom said Mr. Grant was a good man. She said he'd want someone to speak up when things were wrong, so I'm speaking up. You're a liar, and my mom has proof. Hayes grabbed the girl's arm. Listen, you little... That's when Zara stood up. She didn't make a scene, didn't shout, just stood, smoothed her dress, and walked across the ballroom toward table 1. Every instinct told her to stay hidden, stick to her plan, let this play out. But watching Hayes grab that child sparked something she couldn't ignore. Her mother's voice in her head, power means nothing if you only use it when it's convenient. Zara reached table 1 just as security arrived. Excuse me, she said clearly. Take your hands off that child. Hayes barely glanced at her. This doesn't concern you. Security, remove both of them. I said, take your hands off that child. Zara's voice was steel wrapped in silk. She looked at Hayes directly. Now, something in her tone made Hayes look up. Really look. And for just a second, Zara saw recognition flicker in his eyes. Do I know you? You should. But you didn't pay attention 3 years ago, so I'm not surprised you don't remember now. Hayes released the girl's arm, but his expression was contemptuous. Look, I don't know who you are, but this is a private event. If you don't have business here... Oh, I have business here. Quite a lot of business, actually. Zara pulled out her phone, opened an email, and showed it to Hayes. This is my invitation to the Grant Industries Charity Gala, addressed to Zara Grant. The blood drained from Hayes' face. Around table 1, board members were suddenly paying attention. Director Martinez's eyes went wide. Director Chen choked on his wine. That's not possible, Hayes said quietly. You've been gone for 3 years. I've been busy, learning, building, investigating. Zara turned to the young girl. Destiny, is it? Tell me about your mother. The girl's voice was stronger now. My mom is Patricia Mitchell. She worked in accounting at Grant Industries for 15 years. Last year, she noticed irregularities in vendor payments. Millions of dollars going to companies that didn't seem to exist. When she asked Mr. Hayes about it, he fired her and told everyone she was stealing. She wasn't. She was trying to stop someone else from stealing. And you came here tonight to tell people the truth? My mom said someone needed to know, someone who cared. Zara smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who's been waiting 3 years for this exact moment. Destiny, I care. Very much. She looked at Hayes. And I'd like to hear more about these vendor payments. Since I own 87% of Grant Industries, those irregularities directly affect my bottom line. If you're watching this and you want to see how Zara takes back everything they stole, make sure you're subscribed to Excellent Power and Passion Stories. Because what happens next is a masterclass in how a powerful woman dismantles everyone who underestimated her. And trust me, this is just the beginning. The ballroom went silent. Every table, every conversation, every side deal happening in corners, all of it stopped. Christopher Hayes stood frozen, champagne glass in hand, staring at the woman he'd dismissed as irrelevant 3 years ago. Director Martinez found his voice first. Zara, my God, you thought I'd disappeared, that I'd taken my trust fund and faded away like a good little heiress who didn't know better. Zara's voice carried across the ballroom, clear and sharp. You thought wrong. She turned to Destiny. Sweetheart, where's your mother? In the lobby, security wouldn't let her in. Let's fix that. Zara looked at the security guards who'd been moving to escort Destiny out. Gentlemen, you're going to go to the lobby and bring Patricia Mitchell up here. You're going to apologize for not letting her in, and you're going to seat her at table 1. Because anyone who tries to expose theft at my company deserves a front row seat when that theft is proven. The guards looked at Hayes, uncertain. Don't look at him, Zara said coldly. He works for me. I'm giving you a direct order. Either follow it or I'll have you fired along with everyone else who's been enabling this fraud. The guards left. Hayes finally found his voice. Zara, I don't know what you think you've discovered, but what I've discovered? Zara pulled a slim leather folder from her clutch. She'd been carrying it all night, waiting for this moment. Let's talk about what I've discovered. In the past 3 years, you've diverted $47 million from Grant Industries into shell companies. You've accepted kickbacks from vendors totaling another $12 million. You've used company funds to purchase personal real estate in the Hamptons, Manhattan, and Toronto. And most creatively, you've been running a procurement fraud scheme where you create fake companies, approve their contracts, and funnel the money back to yourself. She opened the folder. Inside were documents, bank records, screenshots, all organized with the precision of someone who'd spent 3 years building an airtight case. But that's not even the interesting part. Zara's voice dropped lower, more dangerous. The interesting part is that $500,000 from one of your shell companies was paid to a mechanic named Roberto Salinas 3 days before my parents' plane went down over the Atlantic. The same plane Salinas inspected and cleared for flight despite evidence of tampered hydraulic systems. The ballroom was so quiet that the sound of Hayes' champagne glass hitting the floor was like a gunshot. You killed them, Zara said softly. My father discovered your embezzlement. He was going to fire you when he got back from London, so you made sure he never came back. You murdered my parents and stole my company while I was burying them. Hayes' face went from pale to gray. That's insane. You have no proof. I have bank records showing the payment to Salinas. I have testimony from Salinas himself. He's cooperating with federal investigators in exchange for reduced charges. I have communications between you and 3 board members discussing how to handle the Richard problem weeks before the crash. And I have video footage from the hangar showing Salinas accessing the jet's maintenance panel at 11:43 p.m., 2 days before my parents' flight, when he had no authorized reason to be there. She pulled out her phone, played a video. The ballroom screens meant for displaying charity impact photos suddenly showed grainy security footage. A man in a mechanic's uniform, clearly visible, accessing a private jet. That jet, Zara said, has tail number N847RG, Richard Grant's personal aircraft, the one that went down 3 days after this footage was recorded. Director Chen stood up, his face ashen. Hayes, what the hell did you do? Hayes looked around the ballroom, at 500 of Manhattan's elite watching him, at the board members he'd manipulated, at the empire he'd tried to steal. And Zara watched him make a decision. He ran, tried to, anyway. He made it 3 steps before 2 men in dark suits stepped into his path. They weren't private security. They were federal agents. Christopher Hayes, one of them said, pulling out credentials. FBI, you're under arrest for wire fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit murder. As they handcuffed Hayes, Zara walked up to him, looked him in the eye. My father taught me that power is meaningless without accountability. You forgot that lesson. I didn't. Hayes was led away. The ballroom exploded into chaos. People talking, phones coming out. Journalists who'd been invited to cover the charity event realizing they were witnessing the scandal of the year. Zara turned to the board members, still frozen at table 1. Gentlemen, I believe we have some business to discuss. The emergency board meeting happened in a private room at the plaza. Zara, the 10 board members, and 2 lawyers who represented Grant Industries. Only now, everyone knew who was really in charge. Zara stood at the head of the table, the same table where 3 years ago, these men had voted to sideline her. Let's be clear about something, she began. I own 87% of Grant Industries. That means every decision you've made for the past 3 years required my approval. Legally speaking, you've been operating my company without authorization. I could sue every one of you personally for breach of fiduciary duty. Director Williams, one of Hayes' strongest supporters, found his voice. Zara, we were trying to protect the company. You were 25, grieving, inexperienced. I was 25 and held an MBA from Columbia. I'd been learning this business since I was 16, and I was the legal owner. Zara's voice was calm but cutting. Let me tell you what you were really protecting. You were protecting your own positions, your salaries, your bonuses. Hayes was stealing, and several of you knew it. You knew, and you said nothing because he was keeping you rich. She pulled out more documents. Director Williams, you accepted $200,000 from one of Hayes' shell companies, disguised as a consulting fee. Director Paulson, you approved contracts with vendors that didn't exist and received a 5% kickback. Director Chen, I didn't know about the murder. Chen said desperately, I swear to God, Zara, I approved some questionable deals and I'll take responsibility for that. But I had no idea Hayes killed your parents. I believe you. The FBI believes you too. That's why you're only facing fraud charges, not murder conspiracy. Zara, let that sink in. But here's what's going to happen. Director Williams, Director Paulson, and Director Jennings, you're resigning from the board effective immediately. You'll repay every dollar you took in kickbacks plus interest. And you'll cooperate fully with federal investigators. And if we don't, Paulson asked, then I'll pursue criminal charges, civil suits, and I'll make sure every business in Manhattan knows exactly what you did. You'll never work again. Your families will know what you did. Your reputations will be destroyed. She smiled. Or you can resign quietly, pay the money back, and fade into obscurity. Your choice. They chose resignation. That left 7 board members, Director Martinez, Director Chen, and 5 others who'd been less involved in Hayes' schemes. The rest of you, Zara said, have a choice. You can resign and walk away clean, or you can stay, take a 50% pay cut, and help me rebuild this company the right way. With oversight, with transparency, with actual accountability. Director Martinez, who'd been her father's friend, spoke up. Zara, I owe you an apology. I should have fought harder to keep you involved. I should have questioned Hayes more. I failed Richard and I failed you. Yes, you did. But my father trusted you for 40 years. That has to count for something. Zara looked at him directly. Are you willing to help me fix this? Whatever you need. Then you're my new COO. Director Chen, you're CFO. But we're implementing quarterly audits by an independent firm, and every major financial decision gets reviewed by me personally. She turned to the remaining 5 board members. Gentlemen, what's it going to be? 4 of them chose to stay. 1 resigned. Just like that, Zara Grant reclaimed her company. But the night wasn't over. Patricia Mitchell, Destiny's mother, was brought into the room by the same security guards who tried to throw her daughter out. She was a black woman in her 40s, wearing a worn but professional dress, her eyes red from crying. Miss Mitchell, Zara said gently, I understand you were fired for asking questions about financial irregularities. Yes, ma'am. I worked in accounting for 15 years. I loved that job. But when I noticed vendor payments that didn't make sense, when I tried to investigate, Mr. Hayes said I was stealing. He blacklisted me. I can't get hired anywhere in finance now. That changes today. First, you're rehired. Same position, same salary, with 3 years of back pay for wrongful termination. Second, you're getting a promotion. You're now Director of Financial Compliance. Your job is to make sure what Hayes did never happens again. Third, your daughter's college education is paid for. Full ride, whatever school she wants. Patricia Mitchell started crying. I don't understand. Why? Because you did what everyone else was too afraid to do. You asked questions when something was wrong. That's exactly the kind of person I need running financial oversight at my company. Destiny, who'd been sitting quietly in the corner, spoke up. Are you really the owner? I really am. My mom said the Grants were good people. She said Mr. Grant treated people with respect. He did, and I'm going to make sure Grant Industries does the same. Zara knelt down to Destiny's eye level. You were very brave tonight. Walking into a room full of powerful people and speaking truth takes courage. Don't ever lose that. Are you brave? I'm learning to be. Sometimes bravery isn't about being fearless. It's about being terrified and doing the right thing anyway. The emergency board meeting ended at 2 a.m. By the time Zara walked out of the plaza, the story was already breaking online. Grant Industries CEO arrested for murder and fraud. Missing heiress returns to reclaim empire. Zara Grant, the billionaire who came back from the dead. Zara didn't go back to her Brooklyn apartment. Instead, she went to her old penthouse on the Upper East Side, the place she hadn't visited in 3 years. Her father's study was exactly as he'd left it. Books on the shelves, his reading glasses on the desk, a photo of Zara at her Columbia graduation, Richard beaming with pride. She sat in his chair in the empty apartment and finally let herself cry. Not because she'd lost, because she'd won, and her parents weren't here to see it. The next morning, Zara Grant walked into Grant Industries headquarters for the first time in 3 years. The building was a 47-story tower in Midtown Manhattan, all glass and steel. The lobby had Richard Grant's portrait on the wall, a permanent reminder of the man who built everything. Zara walked past it, wearing a tailored black suit, her hair pulled back, carrying a briefcase that held the restructuring plans she'd been working on for months. Employees stared, whispered, pulled out phones. She took the private elevator to the executive floor, walked past cubicles full of people who'd been working under Hayes, wondering if they still had jobs. She reached the CEO's office, her father's office, the place Hayes had occupied for 3 years. The nameplate on the door still said Christopher Hayes. Zara pulled it off, dropped it in the trash, and walked inside. The office was obscene. Hayes had redecorated, replacing her father's modest furnishings with a glass desk, designer chairs, and artwork that probably cost more than most employees made in a year. Zara buzzed the executive assistant. Get me facilities. I want all this furniture gone by end of day. Replace it with what my father had. And I want a company-wide meeting in the auditorium at 11 a.m. Yes, Miss Grant. And, ma'am? Welcome back. At 11 a.m., 700 Grant Industries employees packed into the ground floor auditorium. They'd all seen the news. They all knew Hayes had been arrested. They all knew the missing heiress had returned. But they didn't know what came next. Zara walked onto the stage. No notes. No script. Good morning. My name is Zara Grant. For those who don't know, I am Richard and Diana Grant's daughter. I own 87% of this company. And as of today, I'm your CEO. Silence. I know you have questions. I know you're worried about your jobs, your projects, your futures. So let me be clear about what's happening. She pulled up a slide showing Grant Industries' financial overview. Christopher Hayes has been stealing from this company for years. $47 million in direct embezzlement. Another $30 million in fraudulent contracts and kickbacks. That theft hurt all of you. It limited our ability to give raises. It forced budget cuts. It made your jobs harder while Hayes got richer. She let that sink in. Here's what's changing. First, every employee gets a 5% raise, effective immediately. That's what you would have gotten if Hayes hadn't been stealing from us. Surprised murmurs. Second, we're implementing a profit-sharing program. If Grant Industries makes money, you make money. Not just executives, everyone, from the mailroom to the boardroom. Louder murmurs now. Third, we're creating an anonymous reporting system. If you see something wrong, you can report it without fear of retaliation. Patricia Mitchell tried to report Hayes' theft. She was fired and blacklisted. That will never happen again at this company. Whistleblowers will be protected, and if their reports lead to stopping fraud, they'll be rewarded. She paused. My father built this company on one principle: treat people with respect and they'll build something great. Hayes forgot that. I won't. This company belongs to all of us, not just me. Not just executives, all of us. And we're gonna build it back the right way. The applause started slowly, then built. By the time Zara left the stage, 700 employees were on their feet. For the first time in 3 years, Grant Industries felt like her father's company again. Over the next 6 months, Zara rebuilt everything. She fired 12 executives who'd been part of Hayes' schemes. She restructured entire departments. She killed projects that existed only to funnel money to Hayes' associates. And she started winning. Grant Industries landed a massive contract with a tech consortium based in Toronto worth $800 million. Zara personally flew to Canada, pitched the deal herself, and closed it in 3 days. She opened a new division focused on sustainable real estate development, partnering with firms in Los Angeles and Sydney who specialized in green building technology. Within 6 months, they had projects in 4 countries. She invested $50 million into Grant Media, the company's struggling publishing arm, and hired a new team of editors who specialized in diverse voices. Within a year, 3 of their books hit the New York Times bestseller list. The company that had been bleeding money under Hayes' leadership was now profitable again. Stock prices rose, revenue increased, employees stayed late not because they were forced to, but because they believed in what they were building. And Zara was personally worth $3.2 billion. But the thing that made her proudest wasn't the money. It was a letter she received 6 months after the gala. From Destiny Mitchell. Dear Miss Grant, my mom says I should call you Miss Zara, but that feels weird, so I'm going with Miss Grant for now. I wanted to say thank you for giving my mom her job back. She's so happy now. She comes home smiling instead of crying, and she says she gets to help make sure what happened to us never happens to anyone else. That's really cool. Also, thank you for saying I was brave. I didn't feel brave. I felt scared. But you said brave people are scared and do the right thing anyway. I'm going to remember that. My mom showed me some of the programs you're starting at Grant Industries. The scholarship program for kids whose parents work at the company. The community partnerships with schools in Brooklyn and the Bronx. The mentorship program for young women who want to work in business. Those are really good things. I'm only 12, so I don't know a lot about business yet. But I think you're doing what your dad would have wanted. My mom says your dad was one of the good ones. I think you are too. Your friend, Destiny Mitchell. P.S. When I grow up, I want to work at Grant Industries. Is that okay? Zara kept that letter in her desk drawer. On days when the board pushed back on her decisions, when investors questioned her strategies, when rebuilding her father's legacy felt impossible, she'd read it again and remember why she'd come back in the first place. But the story doesn't end with a triumphant CEO and a rescued company, because Zara's return created ripples that went far beyond Grant Industries. Christopher Hayes' arrest triggered federal investigations into 23 other companies. Investigators discovered a network of corrupt executives using similar embezzlement schemes, all connected through the same accounting firm Hayes had used to hide his theft. 15 CEOs were eventually charged. 8 went to prison. And the case became a landmark example of how one person's courage to speak up, in this case, Patricia Mitchell, could expose systemic corruption. The University of Toronto's Business School created a case study about Zara's reclamation of Grant Industries. It's now taught in MBA programs across North America as an example of strategic planning, patient execution, and ethical leadership. But there was one more surprise waiting. 18 months after Hayes' arrest, Zara received a call from a lawyer in London representing a firm called Sterling Investigations. "Miss Grant, my name is Catherine Moss. My firm was hired by your father 3 months before he died." Zara went cold. "Hired for what?" "To investigate Christopher Hayes. Your father suspected Hayes was stealing. He wanted proof before making accusations. We were in the process of gathering evidence when your parents' plane went down. After their deaths, we weren't sure what to do with the information. The person who'd hired us was gone. We didn't know if we should come forward. And now that Hayes has been arrested and you've reclaimed the company, we wanted you to know what your father knew. He was going to fire Hayes the day he returned from London. He had evidence. He was ready to act. Why are you telling me this now?" "Because we found something else while investigating Hayes. Something your father didn't know about yet." "What?" "He wasn't working alone. Hayes had a partner. Someone who helped him orchestrate the more sophisticated thefts. Who provided the shell companies. Who introduced him to the mechanic who sabotaged your parents' plane." Zara's grip on the phone tightened. "Who?" "Her name is Victoria Hastings. She's a financial consultant based in Manhattan, specializes in helping executives hide assets and move money offshore. She's brilliant at covering tracks. We couldn't prove her involvement at the time, but now that Hayes has been arrested, he started talking. He's giving up everyone to reduce his sentence. Victoria Hastings is one of his primary names." Victoria Hastings, the gorgeous woman in diamonds sitting next to Hayes at the gala. The one Zara had made a mental note to investigate. "Miss Moss, I need everything you have on Victoria Hastings. Every document, every connection, every transaction. We've already prepared a full dossier. I'm emailing it to you now. But Miss Grant, you should know Victoria Hastings is extremely well connected. She has clients among Manhattan's elite, including several billionaires, 3 U.S. senators, and at least 1 federal judge. Going after her won't be like going after Hayes. She has the kind of power that fights back." "Good," Zara said quietly. "I'm tired of fighting people who can't defend themselves. Let's see how she does against someone who's ready." The dossier arrived within the hour. Zara spent the entire night reading it. Victoria Hastings, age 38, Columbia Law School graduate. Former attorney at a white shoe Manhattan firm before going independent as a wealth management consultant. In reality, she specialized in helping rich people hide money, evade taxes, and commit financial crimes without getting caught. Her client list read like a who's who of corrupt power: CEOs who embezzled, hedge fund managers who ran insider trading schemes, real estate developers who laundered money through property deals. And she'd been Hayes' partner for 6 years. Every major theft Hayes committed, Victoria had facilitated. She created the shell companies. She managed the offshore accounts. She even helped plan the timing of Richard Grant's murder, making sure Hayes would be positioned to take over immediately after. But Victoria was smart. Everything was layered behind corporate structures, attorney-client privilege claims, and enough legal gray area that prosecutors struggled to build cases. Until now. Because Hayes was talking, and he had receipts, emails, recorded calls, bank records showing payments from Victoria's accounts to the mechanic who sabotaged the plane. The FBI was building a case. But it would take time, months, maybe years. Zara didn't have years. She had something better. She had money, patience, and a complete understanding of how Victoria operated. If the FBI was going to take years to bring Victoria down through legal channels, Zara would destroy her another way. She'd destroy her reputation. Zara spent the next 3 months quietly reaching out to Victoria's clients. Not to accuse, not to threaten, just to ask questions. "I'm conducting due diligence on financial consultants for Grant Industries. I noticed Victoria Hastings worked with your company. Could you share your experience?" Most of Victoria's clients were too scared to talk, but a few, the ones Victoria had already abandoned when Hayes got arrested, were angry enough to cooperate. A tech CEO in San Francisco who'd paid Victoria $3 million to hide assets during his divorce, only to have his wife's lawyers find everything anyway. A real estate developer in Toronto who'd used Victoria's shell companies to hide income, only to face tax fraud charges when the structures collapsed. A hedge fund manager who'd paid Victoria to facilitate insider trading, then watched as the SEC started investigating the exact trades Victoria had promised were untraceable. One by one, Zara documented Victoria's failures. The clients she betrayed, the schemes that had fallen apart, the people she'd destroyed. And then Zara did something brilliant. She didn't go to the media. She went to the other wealth management consultants, the legitimate ones, the ones who hated that Victoria made their entire industry look corrupt. She gave them everything, anonymously, through a lawyer in London who couldn't be traced back to Grant Industries. Within a month, whispers started circulating in Manhattan's financial circles. Victoria Hastings can't be trusted. She cooperates with the FBI to save herself. Her structures don't hold up under scrutiny. Victoria's new client calls stopped. Her current clients started asking uncomfortable questions. Her carefully built network of corrupt executives began distancing themselves. And then the Wall Street Journal published a story. The consultant who helped Manhattan's elite commit fraud. It didn't name Victoria explicitly. It didn't have to. Anyone who mattered knew exactly who the article was about. Within 6 months of Hayes' arrest, Victoria Hastings went from being Manhattan's most sought-after financial consultant to being completely radioactive. Her clients left, her reputation crumbled, and when the FBI finally did bring charges 18 months later, she had no one left to defend her. Victoria Hastings was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison for conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, money laundering, and tax evasion. The judge, reading the sentence, said, "You positioned yourself as a sophisticated financial expert. In reality, you were nothing more than a well-educated criminal who helped wealthy people steal and cheat. Your actions contributed to the deaths of 2 innocent people. This court will not show mercy." Zara attended the sentencing, sat in the gallery, watched Victoria Hastings wearing a prison jumpsuit instead of designer clothes, being led away in handcuffs. Victoria looked at her once, just once, and Zara saw in her eyes the recognition of someone who'd been outplayed by a better strategist. After the sentencing, Zara walked out of the courthouse into cold Manhattan air, December wind cutting through her coat, the city where her parents had built an empire. The city where that empire had almost been stolen. The city where she'd taken it all back. Her phone buzzed. Text from Patricia Mitchell, now Director of Financial Compliance at Grant Industries. Quarterly audit complete. 0 irregularities. Every dollar accounted for. I think your father would be proud. Zara smiled. Typed back. I think so too. Thank you for everything, Patricia. No, thank you. You gave me and Destiny our lives back. You gave yourselves your lives back. You had the courage to speak up. I just made sure people listened. She walked toward Grant Industries headquarters. 3 blocks away, she could have taken a car, but she wanted to walk, wanted to feel the city. At the entrance, she paused, looked up at the building. 47 stories of glass and steel, her father's legacy, her mother's pride, her inheritance, and now, finally, hers. Not because she'd inherited it, because she'd earned it. If this story moved you, subscribe to Excellent Power and Passion Stories, because we tell stories about women who don't wait to be rescued, women who strategize, women who take back what's theirs. And if you learned something today, share this with someone who needs to hear it. 5 years after that night at the Plaza Hotel, Zara Grant sat in her father's office, now her office, reviewing expansion plans for Grant Industries. The company was worth $6.8 billion. They had operations in 12 countries, 15,000 employees, and a reputation for being one of the most ethical companies in corporate America. Zara was 33 years old. Forbes had just named her one of the most powerful women in business. Time magazine put her on their cover with the headline, "The Heiress Who Rebuilt Her Empire." But the thing that made her proudest was a program she'd started 2 years earlier, the Destiny Initiative. Named for the 12-year-old girl who'd had the courage to speak truth to power, the program provided full scholarships to children of Grant Industries employees. Not just college scholarships. Full support from middle school through graduate school. Tutoring, mentoring, internships, everything. 247 kids were currently in the program. Kids from Brooklyn, the Bronx, Queens, New Jersey. Kids whose parents worked in Grant Industries warehouses, offices, factories, kids who would have opportunities Zara's parents would have wanted them to have. Destiny Mitchell, now 17, was one of the program's first recipients. She'd just been accepted to Columbia Business School's early admission program. Following in Zara's footsteps, they had lunch once a month. Zara mentoring Destiny the way Zara wished someone had mentored her. At their last lunch, Destiny asked, "Why did you wait 3 years? Why not come back immediately after your parents died and fight Hayes then?" "Because I wasn't ready. I was 25, grieving, and I didn't have the evidence yet. If I challenged Hayes immediately, I would have lost. The board would have sided with him. I would have been pushed out completely. So I waited. I built my own success. I gathered evidence. I made sure that when I finally moved, it would be decisive. That must have been hard. Waiting, watching him steal. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. But my father taught me something important. Timing matters. The right move at the wrong time is still the wrong move. I needed to wait until I had everything I needed to win completely. And now I have a company that employs 15,000 people, a program that gives opportunities to kids like you, and the satisfaction of knowing that the people who killed my parents are in prison for the rest of their lives. Is that enough? Revenge, I mean. It's not revenge, it's justice. And yes, it's enough." Zara paused. "But you want to know what's better than justice? Building something that outlasts the people who tried to destroy you. Hayes and Victoria are in prison, but Grant Industries is thriving. The Destiny Initiative is changing lives. That's the real victory. Not destroying them, outliving what they tried to do." Destiny smiled. "I'm going to remember that." "Good. Because someday, someone's going to underestimate you. They're going to look at a young black woman and assume you don't belong. And when that happens, I want you to remember something." "What?" "You don't have to prove yourself to people who've already decided you're not worthy. You prove yourself by building something they can't ignore. By being so undeniably excellent that their opinions become irrelevant. That's real power." 3 months later, Zara received an invitation to speak at Columbia Business School's graduation, the same school where she'd gotten her MBA 8 years earlier. She stood at the podium, looking at 500 graduates, and she told them the truth. "When I was sitting where you are, I thought the hardest part of business would be learning strategy, finance, operations, marketing, all the technical skills. I was wrong. The hardest part is having the courage to act when everyone tells you you're wrong. To wait when every instinct tells you to move immediately. To trust yourself when the world is telling you you're not enough." 3 years after I graduated, I inherited a company worth billions. The board immediately decided I wasn't qualified to run it. They weren't entirely wrong. I was 25. I'd never been a CEO. I had an MBA, but no real-world experience. But they made a mistake. They assumed that because I was young, black, and female, I would accept their dismissal quietly. They assumed I'd take my trust fund and disappear. They assumed wrong. I spent 3 years preparing. Not loudly, not publicly, quietly, strategically, building my own success, gathering evidence, learning the skills I needed. And when I finally moved, I did it decisively. Here's what I learned, and here's what I want you to remember. First, your credentials matter, but they're not enough. You all have degrees from one of the best business schools in the world. That's worth something, but it's just a starting point. What you do with that education determines whether you succeed or disappear. Second, when someone underestimates you, let them. There's power in being underestimated. People who don't take you seriously won't see you coming. Use that. Third, patience is a weapon. The ability to wait, to build, to prepare while everyone else moves impulsively, that's how you win wars, not just battles. Fourth, protect your integrity. I rebuilt my company by exposing corruption. If I'd been corrupt myself, I wouldn't have had the moral authority to do that. Your reputation is built slowly and destroyed instantly. Guard it. Fifth, and most important, use your power to create opportunities for others. I'm a billionaire. I could spend my life buying yachts and vacation homes. Instead, I'm funding scholarships for kids whose parents work in warehouses. I'm creating mentorship programs for young women entering business because power means nothing if you only use it for yourself. You're graduating into a world that will tell you how to succeed, how to network, how to climb corporate ladders, how to make money. All of that is fine. But ask yourself what kind of success you want. Success that only benefits you, or success that creates opportunities for the people coming after you. My father built a billion-dollar company. That was impressive. But what I remember most about him is that he learned the names of every security guard, every janitor, every person who worked in his building. He treated the CEO and the mailroom clerk with the same respect. That's the legacy I'm trying to continue. So as you leave here today, think about the legacy you want to build. Not just the career, the legacy. Because I promise you, 20 years from now, you won't remember how many promotions you got or how big your salary was. You'll remember whether you did work that mattered, whether you treated people with dignity, whether you left things better than you found them. That's success. Everything else is just money. The applause lasted 3 minutes. Afterward, 20 students came up to Zara asking for advice, mentorship, job opportunities. One of them was a young black woman, maybe 25, nervous but determined. Miss Grant, my name is Amara Jackson. I'm starting at a consulting firm next month. I'm their only black analyst. I'm scared I won't belong. Zara looked at this young woman who reminded her so much of herself 8 years ago. You won't belong, Zara said. At first, they're going to make you feel like you don't. They're going to question your ideas. They're going to make you work twice as hard for half the recognition, and you're going to wonder if you made a mistake. Amara's face fell. But, Zara continued, belonging isn't given. It's taken. You're going to walk in there and prove you're the best analyst they have. Not by bragging. Not by playing politics. By doing exceptional work. By being so undeniably good at your job that they can't ignore you. And when you get to a position of power, you're going to make sure the next young black woman who walks through that door doesn't have to fight as hard as you did. That's how we change things. Not by waiting for the world to welcome us, by forcing the world to make room. Amara smiled. Thank you. I needed to hear that. One more thing. When you feel like giving up, and you will remember that every successful woman you admire felt exactly the same way at some point. The difference between the ones who made it and the ones who didn't isn't talent. It's refusal to quit. 7 years after reclaiming Grant Industries, Zara Grant stood in her penthouse overlooking Manhattan. The same penthouse where she'd cried the night she took back her company. The same penthouse her parents had lived in before they died. She was 35 years old, worth $4.1 billion personally. Grant Industries was worth $8.2 billion. But the number that mattered most to her was 247. The number of kids in the Destiny Initiative who wouldn't have to choose between potential and poverty. Her phone rang. Patricia Mitchell. Zara, I'm so sorry to bother you at home, but there's a situation. What kind of situation? A whistleblower report just came in. One of our regional managers in Los Angeles has been falsifying time cards and pocketing the difference. Small amounts, maybe 50,000 total, but it's the exact kind of fraud we created the reporting system to catch. Good. Fire him. Recover the money. And make sure every employee knows what happened and why. Transparency. Already done. But Zara, he's saying he learned it from Hayes, that the culture of the company before you took over normalized this kind of theft. That's exactly why we can't tolerate it now. The culture only changes if we actually enforce the new rules. I agree. I'll send you the full report tomorrow. Patricia? Yes? Thank you for everything. You've built the most effective compliance program I've ever seen. My father would have been lucky to have you. Silence on the line. Then Patricia's voice, thick with emotion. That means everything, Zara. Everything. After hanging up, Zara walked to her father's study, the room she'd preserved exactly as he left it. His books, his desk, his reading glasses. She sat in his chair and pulled out a letter. Not one she'd received, one she'd written. She'd written it 5 years ago, the night she reclaimed Grant Industries. A letter to her parents, telling them everything that had happened, everything she'd done to take back what they built. She never sent it. There was nowhere to send it, but she kept it in her father's desk as a reminder. Tonight, she read it again. Dear Mom and Dad, I took it back. Everything Hayes stole, I made him pay for what he did to you. I made sure everyone who helped him faced consequences. And I've been trying every single day to run this company the way you would have wanted. I know I'm not perfect. I know I've made mistakes, but I'm trying. I'm trying to treat people with dignity. I'm trying to create opportunities. I'm trying to build something that matters more than money. I hope you're proud. I hope wherever you are, you know that your legacy didn't die with you. It lives in this company. It lives in the kids we're helping. It lives in every person who works here and knows they're valued. I miss you both, every day, but I'm not just grieving anymore. I'm building. The way you taught me. Thank you for everything. Love, Zara. She folded the letter, put it back in the desk, and for the first time in 7 years, she felt something close to peace. Here's my question for you. What would you do if someone stole everything you'd built? Would you fight back immediately, or would you wait, plan, and strike when you were ready? Drop your answer in the comments. Let's talk about it. Because the best revenge isn't impulsive, it's strategic. This is Excellent Power and Passion Stories. Subscribe if you believe strong women don't just survive betrayal, they turn it into their greatest weapon. We'll see you in the next one.